Hello, everybody. It's Dale, and welcome to Everything Wrong with the House of Representatives, or whatever title I put on this. I'm not exactly sure yet. But, so, as anybody following politics a little bit understands, we finally have a Speaker of the House, Mr. McCarthy. It's going to be Speaker McCarthy. And this is, like, insanely, it's comical. Whether you're on the left or the right, this is the first time that we haven't elected a speaker on the first vote in like 100 years. As I'm sure everybody knows. But here's my take on it. First of all, anybody who voted for Republicans, state, local is different. Again, or as I always say, not again, I haven't said it yet in this video, but as I always say, the government is fluid. It changes all the time. Anybody who talks about the government anybody who's been talking about the government the same way for the last 10, 20 years isn't really paying that much attention, because the government changes, the people in there change, so it's not the same thing as it was 10 years ago, right? But McCarthy is in a very, very predictable situation, because anybody that voted for Republicans had to understand that if the Republicans took the House of the Senate, they're going to do the same thing they've done for the last 20 years, and that is pretty much just block everything that the Democrats try to do. That's what they were going to do. So if you voted for a Republican, then you were pretty much voting for the government to not do anything for 2 years, which, for some people in the country, maybe they don't want the federal government to do anything for 2 years. For the rest of us, maybe we should, be trying to compete with our international rivals. So anybody that voted for a Republican, they voted for the government to just completely stop doing anything for the next 2 years. So that's what's going to happen. So McCarthy, whether or not he got, everybody knew that he was going to eventually get it. And the amount of concessions that he had to make to the radicalists in his party, he's not going to do anything. He's not going to do anything anyway. And he was never going to do anything. It didn't matter if he got the gavel, days ago, or if he was still trying to get the votes. The Republicans aren't dumb enough to not elect a speaker and not launch all the crazy investigations that they're going to want to launch. There's no way. The problem is, so he was never going to do anything. The Republicans ran a campaign in 2020 basically saying that we're going to stop everything that the Democrats want to do. And, a lot of moderates in the country and conservatives, maybe that's what they wanted, but what they should have done is vote for people that said that they want to work with the Democrats to fix problems. But they didn't do that. They voted for the people that said that they're going to block everything that the Democrats want to do. So that's what they're going to do. Anybody that expected the House is going to actually do anything? No. And honestly, I think it's kind of a bad thing, because all that's going to happen is that because the House is going to basically just be a clown show for the next, 2 years, because that's what the radicalists and a lot of the regular everyday rank and file conservatives want. Reagan said the government isn't the solution to the problem, the government is the problem. So if you vote for a party that bases their ideological principle on this notion, what makes you think that they're going to do anything to try to make the government actually work? Why would they want to do that? Because then if the government does work, then they're wrong. Who's going to do something that's going to prove themselves wrong? Nobody does that. So the House was never going to do anything. So that part of it doesn't matter. What does matter is that because McCarthy is bowing to all these radicalists, they're going to try to make the news every chance they get. They're going to try to pass as, it's sensationalism. Because the Republican Party doesn't actually really believe that the government should do any actual governing at all, or at least at the federal level, right? At the state and local level, they do plenty of governing there. Whether or not it's good for everybody in that state is debatable. But at the federal level, they don't even believe that the federal government should do anything. So of course they were going to block everything that Democrats tried to do. The only thing that Republicans, and this ain't just me saying it, and I'm not trying to be, biased, everybody's going to accuse me of being partisan or whatever. I'm just going off of what the Republicans have done. Not what they've said, but what they've done over the last 10 years. And the only thing that the Republicans have done over the last 10 years is tax cuts and deregulation. And that's what they tell you. Tax cuts, deregulation. That's the solution to everything. Inflation, tax cuts, deregulation. Economic collapse, recession, tax cuts, deregulation. Heck, even whenever times are good, well, the times are good, now's the perfect time for some more tax cuts and deregulation. So that's all they've had, and that's all they've had my entire life. I'm 37 years old. The Republicans have not had a new idea my entire life. They haven't had a new one. They don't have any new ideas. In fact, their only new ideas are represented by who? The Freedom Caucus. The Freedom Caucus is the only new idea that the Republicans have had. And that new idea is that, hey, our voters hate liberals. So we can literally just create our own independent fascist states where conservatives are like, the Putin regime or the Communist Party in China, and everybody else can just do whatever we say. And that's the only idea that's changed in the Republican Party, is that they realize that they might actually be able to do that. And now they have the Supreme Court to pull it off. So as far as the House, they weren't going to do anything anyway. And in fact, it's a little bit worrisome because there's a lot of people on the left who are, they're over here just laughing about, oh, it's going to be a clown show. We're going to destroy him in 2024 because they're going to make it look. First of all, most people don't even follow politics. They don't even follow politics. Sure, I'm sure they've heard about the House. Maybe their friends mentioned it. But most people barely follow politics. Of the people that are actually going to vote in 2024, if half of them follow politics, I'd be pretty shocked. Most people just vote, or the majority of people that vote feel like they have an obligation to vote, so that's what they do. And they usually just vote along with what everybody else in that community votes for, right? So liberals have to understand that over this next 2 years, you can't sit back and just let the Republican Party implode on themselves, because, the Freedom Caucus is going to get a ton of airtime because they're going to do as much crazy stuff as they want. That's their goal. Their goal is what Steve Bannon said: deconstruct the administrative state. Now, anybody who actually thinks about that past the deconstruction part would realize that, and replace it with what? Steve Bannon talks about deconstructing the administrative state and then replace it with what? With what? Exactly. It's probably their own, fascist wet dream. And I'm not saying that Steve Bannon's a fascist. I'm not saying everybody on the right's a fascist. Most of your everyday rank and file conservatives, they're not fascists. They're not racist. It's the people in the Republican Party. It's all of the grifters. It's all of the, it's all of the authoritarians are realizing that they can use the conservative hatred for liberals to further their own authoritarian goals. And that's what they're doing. So, honestly, the whole drama with McCarthy and all that doesn't matter, because the House was never going to do anything anyway. And everybody's saying, oh, well, now he's having to cater to the most radical the most extreme wing of the party. He was always going to have to do that. I wish I'd have started this channel some time ago, because I'd have told you exactly how this is going to go down. He's going to have to cater to them. They're going to launch an investigation. And what's sad about it is the Republican Party has the perfect opportunity right now. At least the sane part of the Republican Party has a perfect opportunity right now. They have the perfect opportunity to do not a 180, but do like a 90-degree turn and head towards at least the area of trying to work with Democrats. They have an opportunity to be seen as heroes for this country and pass a lot of stuff that this country desperately needs, and frame it as a way that, hey, we're the sane Republicans. They could literally squash every single radical element out of that party right now if they just worked with Democrats, but they don't do that. Why? Because of this whole idea of conservative superiority. And I got other videos where I talk a little bit about this more, and I'm going to probably make a little bit more out there, because this is the perfect example of it. Instead of, because all McCarthy had to do was go to Democrats, work some deal with Democrats and say, hey, look, if this radical wing, if they're going to make me do all this, I'm just going to go with y'all. Y'all can vote for me. Y'all can have, more representation in a lot of these committees. And he could have still had a speakership. And if he's working with Democrats, he would have even had more power to do what he wanted to do. He could have had a better chance of passing his agenda, is whatever his agenda was that actually wanted to help the country. Doing all these investigations on the Democrats, how is that helping rural America? All that's doing is giving Fox News and conservative media talking points to talk about for the next 2 years. All this is just, all this is allowing them to basically distract our conservative brothers and sisters instead of doing their job and actually holding Republicans accountable for the corruption on that side, because there's plenty of it on that side, plenty of it on both sides. But conservative media never talks about any of the corruption on the right. They don't talk about that. It's always the left this, the left that, right? So this is the perfect opportunity for the real conservatives, and really anybody who leans conservative out there who wants to get involved in politics and actually spread a message of working with Democrats, because McCarthy put himself in this position. And if he thinks that, over the next 2 years, launch an investigation after investigation, oh, excuse me, still been a little bit sick. If he thinks that that's going to actually, help them electorally, which actually, I don't think he cares. Like, he doesn't care if it helps him electorally because Joe Biden's president. So there's actually an incentive for conservatives in this country, and more worryingly on the state and local level, to make everyday Americans' life as miserable as possible, because then all they have to do is go on right-wing media and blame everything on Joe Biden. So if you're a conservative in this country, you have to demand that your representatives actually stop worrying about Democrats all the time and start fixing the corruption amongst themselves, because you have control over that. They don't have any control over the Democratic Party. They don't have any control over that. None. Zero. So the whole deal about what's going on with the House is that anybody who voted for Republicans and did not expect that this is exactly what was going to happen, that it was going to be a clown show, which I don't even think is a clown show. I mean, honestly, if I'm being 100% honest, the Freedom Caucus played their cards exactly how they should have played their cards. Now, I don't politically agree with them, on their politics and on anything. But if you just look at the political strategy that they did, it worked. It was good. I mean, there was nothing wrong with it, Even though there's only maybe 12 members or something like that, you hold out as long as you can, you get as much concessions as you can. That is politics 101. So they played their politics right. I don't necessarily think it's a good thing for the country, because they're going to get a lot more exposure over the next 2 years than they should. But because of all the annex that they're going to do and all the investigations that they're going to launch, it's basically just going to be a giant distraction fest for right-wing media to distract conservatives from the corruption going on amongst their own party. So that's my take on it. I know I was a little bit everywhere, all over the place. I know we didn't just talk about the House, but again, it's like I always say, politics, it's not easy. It's complicated. Anybody who can anybody trying to put politics into one-liners, it's more complicated than that. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of moving parts. So that's why, it's important for all of us to try to understand, what we're doing whenever we show up at the voting booth. Because if you were a moderate in the country and you voted for Republicans and you actually expected the government to work together and try to solve any of the problems that we're going to run into, you're not paying enough attention. That was never going to happen. That does not exist in the Republican Party. There's no bipartisanship that exists in the Republican Party. The few people that were, at least at the federal, especially at the federal level and at the state level too, there is no idea of bipartisanship. The only place where there are any Republicans that even will play lip service to the idea of bipartisanship is going to be in a blue state. In a red state, purple state, they're not trying to work with Democrats, and they shouldn't. So y'all have a great day. Love you.